I found that kind of medium really static. You know, I'd find myself sort of disappointed if I paid for a ticket, went to see somebody, and it was almost like a glorified karaoke show. So for me, it was like, how do I represent myself on stage? How do I represent this art on stage? Also from a selfish point of view, where I produce a bunch of beats, I'd go to the show and they would perform over one of my beats and I would be waiting for my shout out, or maybe I wouldn't get it, or maybe I didn't like what they did over it, or maybe, you know, a whole bunch of different things. I was like, I need to figure out a way to represent this art form or what I do in a more maybe visual way, and at the same time contribute to what I kind of saw as like a bit of a, you know, stiff performance medium in a way.
Today on the show, we are joined with multi-Juno nominated producer Fresh Kils. And Fresh Kils is not your average hip-hop producer. He's got a live show that will absolutely blow your mind. And he is somebody who I consider one of the pioneers in the Toronto hip-hop scene. I've known him for a handful of years, maybe almost a decade. And every time we cross paths, it's always been small talk with such mutual respect, such a great guy. And being such a fan of his work, it's so great to have him on the podcast and have him break everything down from his journey, his influences, and how Fresh Kils came to be. And recently, he also just dropped an album titled Disclaimer. Definitely check it out. Has lots of features, and like him, totally unique. I can't say that enough, and that's what makes him so cool. And whether you're hearing about him for the first time right now, or been a long-time fan, I think what's special about this interview is you're going to learn some shit you didn't know as we tap into the heart and soul of Andrew Kilgore, aka Fresh Kils. But let's get into that right now. Top of the morning to you though, man. How you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. You know, I'm contemplating my second coffee. Not sure yet if I want to have one of those like borderline anxiety attacks all day. So I'm kind of like trying to.
I totally relate to that. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I need the energy. And then after I'm just like all jittery, or even getting older now, I get like a crazy acid reflex thing going on too. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I gotta temper the coffee intake. So, you know, depending on how I'm
facts.
feeling.
Yeah, but big grats on the latest album, Disclaimer. We're definitely gonna get into that, but I kind of want to go back in time a little bit with you too,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
I always remember like around when I moved to Toronto, probably like a decade ago, just going to different shows and stuff. I still remember like the first time I've seen you, and you were performing live, and it totally just melted my brain and was like something I've never seen before. It's just such a unique thing you do. Beyond like, I know lots of people, they think of a music producer, maybe they think of somebody like in their room on their computer or whatever, but
Mhm.
you kind of like have this whole experience that you bring to an audience as well. And I just want to know, like, how would you describe yourself? Because I have a hard time describing what it is that you do.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because you can't really call me a DJ, but I think also percussionist is too reductive too.
Hmm.
So there's been a lot of names. There's a glossary of names, and we haven't really chosen that. No one sort of made it official yet, but you know, finger drummer seems to be a term that people use. But again, you know, finger drumming is one particular skill set. You know, being able to play drums with your fingers on pads. That would be one part of what I do.
Hmm.
Um, I've been called a pad man. I've been called a pad masher. Was a term used a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it definitely was a kind of a maybe an innovation on the live PA. Like live PA used to be the term used for producers that would have gear on stage and be performing productions. Um, so it's probably the next, you know, whatever the next step of that would be. But there really hasn't been a coined, you know, Webster's dictionary term coined yet
Hmm.
for what I and a growing number of producers, you know, live producers do on stage.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear too. And like I mentioned too, it's like totally unique. And for somebody who's never seen it before, like it's gonna grab your attention. And I know you're kind of like on a lot of bills where it's like hip hop oriented, but also I noticed like within your act too, there's other influences of across all genres. Like I remember one day you just started busting out like some Led Zeppelin samples and like crazy stuff like that too, where I was
Yeah,
just feeling it too. And even one thing I'm curious about too is like sometimes on the show I'll talk to like comedians or musicians and they have their usual influences. Like if I talk to a guitar player, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I grew up listening to Metallica and that made me want to pick it up." Or a comedian will be like, "Oh yeah, I was listening," or like, "I used to watch a lot of Chappelle." What inspired Fresh Kills to get a wall of buttons and do what he does?
oh man. There's probably a couple things. So
Yeah.
I was making beats on a computer before I had an MPC. I could never afford one for my for many years, and I started working in studios as an engineer where the MPC was sort of the center of the production studio for a lot of years. Not just hip hop, but just a lot of people that would be the centerpiece, right? And you would control other units from the MPC. So I had to learn how to use it. I had to learn how to like I had to I would have to prep it for producers coming in from out of town, and that's how I sort of got to know the MP. The reason I'm mentioning that is that once I finally got one in my hands, I didn't really need it to make beats. I already knew how to do that. I've been doing that for years. So my approach to it was very much more like an instrument, and I was much more interested in sort of getting on the pads and trying to figure out what that interface, how that interface would change what I was going to do, right? In the same way that a guitar, if you're playing a guitar, that's going to influence, your chords and what you're going to play, what's going to come out of you. Your interface changes what the output is to some degree, and so when I had the MPC, I really was, for me, it was about getting on the pads and seeing what that was going to do for me. Like how would I approach music differently? So that was sort of the first part of it, or from a technical standpoint, how I approached it. But then also as a producer and a beat maker, going to shows and watching hip hop shows, live hip hop can be very static unless you're, if you're at a Roots show, maybe like you're seeing the Roots and they have
Mhm.
a full band. But a lot of the time you'd see cats, MCs rhyming or doing their songs over a CD player, just playing an instrumental. And I found that kind of medium really static. I'd find myself sort of disappointed if I paid for a ticket, went to see somebody, and it was almost like a glorified karaoke show. So for
Mhm.
me, it was like, how do I represent myself on stage? How do I represent this art on stage? Also, from a selfish point of view, where I produce a bunch of beats, I'd go to the show and they would perform over one of my beats, and I would be waiting for my shout out, or maybe I wouldn't get it, or maybe I didn't like what they did over it, or maybe a whole bunch of different things. I was like, I need to figure out a way to represent this art form or what I do in a more maybe visual way, or and at the same time contribute to what I kind of saw as like a bit of a stiff performance medium in a way.
Yeah, that's amazing too. And it totally makes you a standout compared to like a room of like other producers too, like you mentioned, they could be like in the crowd just waiting, or even I've seen some producer battles in the past too, and it's like they hit a button and kind of like nod their head, where you
Yeah.
have the technology. If you wanted to, you could press one button and chill, but you decide to do it the hard way and make like the beat live in front of you, and it's just such a like a sick energy and show to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. There's a lot of producers who, I would lose to in a battle, but my stage show would, would maybe blow them out of the water or something like that. Who knows? But it did give me a lot of advantages. And again, having done it as early as I did it in the early 2000s, or the middle 2000s rather, there really weren't a lot of people doing it on that level. There were some. I mean, I have to shout out Gel from Anticon. I have to shout out Exile from Blue and Exile and different records. But when I was doing it, when I was developing it, because there were so few of us doing it, just by virtue of that fact, I would be one. I'm one of the best. I was one of the best in the world doing it for a hot minute, you know.
Mhm.
And I'm thankful that it's become as popular as it has, and there's such an amazing new generation of artists doing it. And I'm happy to have my page in whatever strange book that might be, right?
Yeah, definitely.
In the
Like
history
it's
book.
definitely like one of the pioneers. And it's you had to put like a lot of like I can imagine like so much time into it too. Because even when I see you perform, like whether it's live or in a video, you just have like that muscle memory too. And like when I'm looking at what you where you're using, it just looks like a wall of buttons to me. It's like my brain's like, how does he know which one to press? And you're kind of like crossing your arms. Sometimes you're playing with your head, like hitting it off the thing and stuff. So were you really like conscious about like just putting in time and practicing to get like that extra flair and looseness to like what you do?
That's funny. It's a good question. There's a few things about it. One thing is with the finger drumming, and that was one of the first things was learning how to play drums. And I do have a system that I developed that is my own, and I don't. There's really I haven't seen anybody else. Not that I haven't seen anybody else do it per se, but I definitely developed a finger drumming system which helped me. Was kind of a staple of what I do. So it allowed me to be sort of comfortable in a certain pocket and be able to play, and that's key. Um, and I definitely spent 10,000 hours doing that. First of all,
Mhm.
absolutely 10,000 hours beyond, like well beyond that, practicing and doing that. I think I also came out of an era where, like, in terms of doing performance stuff, unless I had something new to bring, I wouldn't want to necessarily just do the same technique to death. So if you watch one of my shows, I'm not finger drumming the whole show. It's definitely about mixing it up and trying to like set it up rather. So, for example, like the flaring finger drumming, arms flailing stuff, it's really fun to watch. But if I did it for 3 straight tracks, you'd probably get bored of it. So for me, it was definitely about setting it up and trying to like mix up the techniques a little bit. And I guess in some ways, a lot of ways, work backwards from if I'm a front row at a show, what do I want to see? What am I going to react to? What's going to be the highest impact that I can make on an audience? And then I work backwards on how to achieve it, as opposed to working from myself. Or like, well, I want to do this for a while, or like I want people that. So that was definitely part of it. And I think I'd have to say too that like I was involved in doing battles early on, and in a battle setting is very different than a DJ setting or maybe a typical performance setting where you've got like a panel of judges who are watching every move, and so there's technical aspects to that. There's like and I drew a lot from the turntablist battle scene where and again, you could probably say, if you wanted to explain what I do, you could probably accurately describe it as I'm doing turntablist battle routines on an NPC, because
Okay.
I was taking things, like I was mouthing the words, I would be dissing people and mouthing the words. It's funny. There's an irreverent aspect to it. It moves quickly. It's definitely arranged very much like a battle would be arranged. I don't hang on any particular moment too long. It's like keep changing things. Like, um, like the best compliment you can get from anyone, from an audience member, is that the set was too short. And so I
Mm.
definitely pride myself on trying to like keep things moving. Like, don't linger, stay busy, and keep changing things, and keep the journey going, and keep pulling the rugs out. Like if you've ever been to a club and you've seen a DJ, like, I don't know there's a name for this type of mixing, but like every 90 seconds they'll just, or every 30 seconds they'll drop a new track, and the
And
quicker
it's
their
almost like right at the
transitions.
climax and everybody's still hype
Yeah.
and then it just boom.
Oh, and it's definitely a way to kind of escalate the hypeness of a crowd, right? Like the quicker
Mm.
your transitions, like, you'll see it in a club, a DJ doing it, and the crowd will just go crazy. Like if it's hit song after hit song after hit song, it's like wow, wow, right? Every change. So, I definitely try to take that and prepare myself that way.
That's great. That's cool to hear your process too, especially you're so conscious about the experience like the audience is getting. Like I've talked to like other artists or just met like a lot of like new artists too, where sometimes they get so much in their own head where they're just worrying about like their personal space or whatever. But
Yeah.
like to like almost like think of it as like I'm gonna bring these people on a ride. That
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
intention itself is so powerful, from the get-go, even if you don't even have a plan yet, just starting with that and taking it there is just that's amazing that you do that.
It's no coincidence that the things that I'm most known for are those routines, which were those battle routines, which were made again with very specifically with an audience member or even a judge in mind. And it's evidence in for example, Prem Rock and I might work on a record, an art rap record that we would slave over for months, and we travel across the ocean to go perform in Europe, and there'd be somebody in Frankfurt or Kelowna who doesn't even speak English as first language, and they'd be screaming at me to do the Transformers routine,
Yeah.
and meanwhile I've got this like piece of art that I've crafted and I want to play, and no, we want to see The Price is Right, we want to see Tenacious D, and that's what a blessing, what a blessing that is.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, even like right when you said Transformers, I'm like, oh yeah, he does have a fire one. It's kind of bringing back like old memories. And yeah, the whole Price is Right thing too. Yeah, it's fun. That's like even the influences aren't just music either. It's pop culture and nostalgia, and like that one kind of makes them like, I don't know, like an extra banger, it just kind of hits you like right in the heart and the feels.
Yeah, and you try to, and for me, it was always trying to find sources that were unlikely, and also sources that were more me than. That's the one part of it that I would say maybe isn't as pandering to an audience in some senses, where, like for example, CBC asked me to do a tribute to, and they gave me a choice. They asked me to either do the Tragically Hip or Muhammad Ali, and I didn't feel like I was really the guy to do the Muhammad Ali thing, because again, like if you're going to do a tribute to Muhammad Ali, there's more culturally appropriate artists maybe to ask to do that. And so I endeavored to try to do the Tragically Hip because I figured it was a little more in my wheelhouse, in terms of like I grew up listening to rock music and playing guitar and stuff.
And a nice Canadian boy,
Yes, and I had a hell of a time. I could not, for the life of me, put the Tragically Hip thing together at all. And I ended up switching over to the Muhammad Ali thing, but making it a comedy thing, making it a thing where he's, he was one of the first battle rappers, put it that way, right? He's literally on TV rapping in rhyme about dissing his opponents in rhyme. And so I kind of used that aspect of it and made that more me. So again, I'm definitely trying to ground things in who I am in terms of picking sources. Like I'm going to take a Tenacious D song and flip it, not just because nobody else has flipped it, but because I absolutely love Tenacious D and I'm a huge fan. And that's really made a lot of the difference, because and that routine in particular, it's really funny the reactions I've had. Like when I do the Tenacious D routine, either you don't know who Tenacious D and you don't really care, or you don't know whatever, but it still sounds good and it's fun, or you come up to me after my show and you grab me by the shoulders and you're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you did that with Tenacious D."
Yeah, just making somebody's night.
Yeah, the strongest reactions to that one, where I'm like, I'm really choosing something that is particular to, not, I mean, to me, but also a particular choice, right? And again, when I started, just last thing I'll say about it is, when I started, because people didn't really understand when I was performing what I was doing, in the same way that one might, when somebody first saw a DJ scratch a record and they didn't necessarily understand what that mean, or rather they wouldn't link what they're seeing to what they're hearing, right? That happened to me early on. People really didn't understand exactly what I was doing, and so I would try to use things that people knew. So the Led Zeppelin routine was kind of born out of that, because if you know the source material, then you have a better, like, you're coming with me on the journey. You have an understanding of what, he's moving that around and he's doing that, and it's sort of reaching across the aisle a little bit too, but at the same time, it's something that's personal to me, like, as a guitar player, being a huge Jimmy Page, like wanting to be Jimmy Page when I was a kid,
Yeah, it's so cool too. And I never even like thought of it this way too. Even with like these routines and you explaining it too, it just shows that you're genuinely like having fun as well. And that comes off a lot on your performance. Like, even I've seen you do a couple, like, I think I've seen you do the Transformers one a couple times, but you always have the energy, like, this is like the first time I'm doing this, and like just having that like it almost always, like pun intended, seems like fresh to you, like as you're playing it, where some artists I know, like night after night, they can be doing the same song and they start to phone it in, just kind of go through the motions, but it never seems like you're going through the motions. You're just kind of in the moment and connecting with the crowd and everything.
I've always appreciated that observation, and that's been made by people, many actually. And the thing is, that's the one thing about it that I never contrived. I mean, I contrive a lot with my set, and that I'm very nervous, so I practice a lot. But that actually is genuine, even though I think one of the criticisms of that has been that it's kind of corny, like I'm smiling so much and
Oh, I disagree, man.
but I really am. I mean, no, but I mean, that really is the genuine side of that,
Yeah.
that is like, as much as my set is crafted, the joy of it is absolutely real. Like I really am having a blast doing it because, I mean, it's like a toy. Like I'm playing this kind of silly toy, and um, I love making beats, and I just love the art of it. Like I believe sampling is an art form, and I know that's can be. I don't think it's as controversial now as it might have been years ago, but I really do genuinely love the art form, and I love what I do, and it's also just insane to me that I could have made some kind of semblance of a career out of it. Like the idea that I would be, because I'm an engineer, really. I'm a sound engineer first and foremost. So this side hilarious novelty thing that I was doing, the fact that that would be the thing that would kind of take me all over the world, and you know, that would really launch me into whatever it has become or whatever it's been, far exceeded any expectations. So I'm literally as amazed on stage and in awe of the whole thing and having a great time as I could be, because it's just so unlikely in so many levels.
Yeah, it's so cool. And yeah, I've seen you like in many different rooms, like make the whole place erupt. And it's gotta be a really cool feeling of something like maybe you crafted in your bedroom, and then all of a sudden you're like in a club and there's hundreds of people just like all watching you, and like maybe you'll hit like a Transformers sample and everyone's like, oh shit, let's
Yeah,
go. Like that's gotta be like a feeling that very few people get in this world.
absolutely. And you know what? I can count on a hand. Like that hasn't happened as many times as I would have liked to have had it happen, obviously. There have been shows where, I have had the crowd in the palm of my hand, and it's been really hilarious. Like there's a show that my friends out on the West Coast will never let me forget, which is I played this huge graffiti party in Oakland. It was in this blown out, like, famous graffiti spot. It's like a 4-story party. It was huge. It was crazy. And no, they'd never seen me before. And I really wanted to make a point. It was my first time out in the Bay Area, and I did the show. And for some reason, I made a point to say I wanted people to remember my name. Some manager person had told me to do this. Anyways, I began the show and I was like, my name's for every. So between every routine, I was like, what's my name? And I started to get the crowd to go to say Fresh Kils. By the end of the set, I had literally become drunk on the power of it all. Like I had like I was on the microphone screaming. And I'm not like this. I really am. And you know me a bit. Like I'm not like this. I was literally going, "What's my effing name?" Like, and the whole Fresh Kils, and it was like, it was one of the craziest experiences of my whole life. And it was like, I really did like grow an extra foot tall and like Hulk out, and it was just so funny. But I have to say, like, last thing I'll say about it too is I do play into it a little bit. Like I think some of my favorite shows of all time have been where I come in and I look, I'll dress like skinny jeans, like tight. I'll have my hair out. I'm not in typical, what you might call typical hip hop fashion garb or whatever. And so I definitely get, people will assume a certain thing of me, right? Or for example, they'll assume that, oh no, this guy's gonna rap. They're gonna look, oh, this guy's gonna grab a microphone. And I've played into that. I've been known to play into the, okay, like you think I'm one thing, but I'm about to completely light this place up. And what's funny
Amazing.
is even if the amount of a leg up that is hard to quantify, but it's actually bigger than you might think, is in the sense of if you think if something's going to happen and then I do completely the opposite, but I'm doing it on a high level, like I'm not just doing something you're not expecting. It's actually good. Like it's really legitimately entertaining. Um, the power of that, I've seen that time and time again. And those are my favorite shows actually, where it's not even that the crowd is as crazy into it or not, but where I've really just completely obliterated people's expectations. Um, that
Yeah,
really is the
that's so
most
cool.
fun, you know. But I mean, and it's why I'll like dress in full. I'll do a full metrosexual look with my crazy hair, right? And
Yeah.
everyone's like, "Oh, this guy's gonna do some weird artsy, you know, thing," and I just bring the hardest beats, and it's like awesome. I love it.
Yeah, and it's like something that people don't forget. Like one thing I do enjoy too when I do see you live too is looking around at other people and maybe seeing somebody's face who hasn't seen you before and just like
Yeah,
their jaw dropping, or you just see their brain like slowly melting. You're like, what the fuck is this guy?
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, it's so cool. And yeah, even like you mentioned some stories of like on your journey of playing live too, and even over the years I've noticed your name's on many tracks of as a producer credit as well too. So
Yeah.
around all this too, you're putting in a lot of work in the studio and working with like a lot of different people. Do you want to tell me a little bit about like that
Oof.
lifestyle? Because I'm sure it's kind of feels a little more on the opposite side where it's more isolated and
Oh yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah.
I'm a studio rat. I'm a career studio rat for sure.
Mhm.
And it is really funny the contrast because like for many, many years, you know, the better part of a decade or a decade at least, my life was either I was either in the studio or on the road. That there was no in between. There were no vacations. There were no, you know, there was no you know, typical job scenario. It was one of those two things. And that was definitely a blessed life, and that I've had, a blessed career that I've had. Um, I think you know, being an engineer is always been my number one. It's been the foundation upon which I've built everything else. You know, being able to record and mix records and work with artists, and being a producer. You know, making beats and producing records. Of course, there's a difference between those two things, but um, I always sort of put it like this, like, you know, if I had waltzed in on the scene and wanted to be the producer or wanted to be this thing, it might not have worked out as well as, you know, learning how to do some of those. You know, not that no one, but not as many people aspire to be an engineer as say aspire to be an artist or a DJ or a performer, right? And so that always was like, you know, a foundation, not just for, you know, just for, you know, financially as a job, because that's also true, but it was also a way to, um, just a great way to engage with other artists, engage with other musicians, you know, put me, you know, make myself, well, you know, you make yourself indispensable in some sense, but you're also like, you're delivering a service to an arts community. And that's, you know, when I came up in Halifax, that was really the beginning of it all, where I was sort of looking around going, well, how can I help my friends that are making art? What can I, how can I contribute? And, you know, I came out there with my little 4-track and my guitar, and so I was already, you know, making records, and it was sort of one foot in front of the other, leading me down that path to running a studio full time, and and again, you know, working long enough that there's luck and there's work. You work hard, you do what you can do, and then there's also, you, if you're lucky enough to come in contact with or work with artists that are really doing incredible things, that have a real vision. As I did with artists like Decisive and Ghetto Socks and other people who, you know, those two ended up that one year in 2012, those two records that I pretty much we did entirely in my little bedroom,
Wow.
um, were nominated for Junos for Best Rap. I mean, that in and of itself, like two of the five, that's 40% of the Canadian rap nominations were done in my little home studio in 2011. So that was
It's
a real
fucking
achievement,
amazing.
and but you know, as much as it was an achievement in terms of all of the work and the hard work that went in there, you know, there's like 10 years of work before that, learning, and there's just luck that I would end up crossing paths with artists like Decisive and Ghetto Socks that really have a vision. And I think the difference being the vision is really the thing that makes the difference between I think a successful artist and an artist that has talent, is a talented writer, is a talented, you know, but an artist with vision is going to be able to kind of I don't know. There's like an ephemeral extra percentage that they add to absolutely every step
Mhm.
if they have vision, if that makes sense. So I've been lucky in that way.
Yeah, that's so cool. And yeah, I agree with the whole vision thing too, because there's been projects where I fucked around with and it's just, oh, I'm winging this or doing it for other reasons, but it didn't have like that core seed or whatever. But sometimes when you just have those intentions and take the first step with like a bigger intention, like just magic starts happening, even if you
Hmm.
don't know where it's gonna end up. And sometimes like during the journey of whether it's recording or something else, it can even like change into something else, but just kind of going with that spirit and intentions and overall
Hmm.
vision, it could be such a powerful tool for somebody.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in that process, there's a lot of almost counterintuitive steps, in some ways. And those are those things where, like I always use this example of Ghetto Socks, where if you look at his records, it's like the album sounds like sounds like the photos look, you know,
Mm,
reads like the interview, like it's a top to bottom, like he dresses the way the album looks, stuff like this. Like there's a totality, there's a holistic approach to it where every step has that intention sort of put into it, and that those are those transcendent things. And that's what I was sort of trying to do, with some of the routines and some of what I was doing, where how do I can I first of all, can you get outside of can you be half outside yourself and half inside yourself, so that you can you can you be of service to the art in its best form, and can you also infuse it with the intention that is truly yourself, right? And unabashedly yourself and honest. That's a tough balance, right? It's a real, that in and of itself is an art form too.
nice, nice. Yeah, it's kind of cool to hear your roots with that and everything. And yeah, recently you just released a disclaimer. Like, it was it 2 weeks ago or this week,
Oh
or
Lord, it's
you had
maybe
the party like a
two, three
couple
weeks
weeks ago,
ago.
right?
Yeah,
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 yeah.
2, 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sad I couldn't make it. I saw it like kept popping up on my timeline. I was working and then just I work in production, so weekends sometimes are hard for me, like later nights too, and it just
Hmm.
like became like almost like 1 in the morning. I'm like, I think this is over by now.
Yes, definitely. I was
Yeah,
exhausted. Oh my God, by 1 o'clock, I was out of it that night. Yes.
yeah. So yeah, like tell me a little bit about this project. It's cool. Like I see some familiar names of some local rappers on it and
Hmm.
artists, and even just I kind of want to know like what inspired you to make your own Fresh Kills album.
Yeah, I mean, part of yeah. So one of the things we were talking about, all these routines, is like I was talking about how working from the audience backwards, and what I've done so few times in my life, and almost not almost never, but close to that, is like worked from from here, and like what is it that I particularly want to say? Again, as an engineer and a producer, you're in shotgun a lot of the time, let's say, in terms of the process. And so, as long as, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this for over 2 decades now, and for this to be my first solo debut release is saying something. Now, I've put out beat tapes before, and I've done routines and stuff like that, and I've done a lot of collaborative work, but doing my own work, um, that's been a challenge, and it's been a challenge in the sense of, and I always go back to this. There's a Nina Simone interview where she talks about, she's asked sort of what she thinks her role is or what her job is as an artist, and she's very clear about that. And as Nina Simone is such an incredible visionary artist, she talks about how her job is to reflect the times in which she lives, and that really kind of set me back, because at the time I was thinking about it. I was like, what exactly do I want to say about my time? How does my music is going to reflect that, and what do I really want to say? As a producer, I can't really say anything because I'm not going to sing or rap. So what's my music going to reflect? And so that was part of the journey, was trying to figure out what I was going to do, and then getting over myself. So disclaimer really is about, the reason it's called that is, I'm very self-deprecating. I'm very I suffer from the imposter syndrome a lot, of not necessarily feeling that I'm you know that I'm as valuable, or that I'm as that's the classic self doubt that an artist has. And I would very, very frequently, if I were to play you something that I was working on, I would always disclaim. There'd be a ton of disclaimers, right? It'd be like,
I
it's
relate to
not
this so much.
right. It's not mixed yet. There's
Yeah.
still work. I'm still working on it.
Mhm.
I'm not sure about this part. I would kind of like disclaim away its worth, and I would do this. My
Mm.
old partner, Uncle Fester in the Extremities, used to get so mad at me because we do an interview, and I would be disclaiming away the value of the record that we just put out. He'd be like, "What are you doing?" And so this record was really about me trying to get over all that and just put out. And again, what I ended up doing was putting out the best 12 songs, the 12 songs or 12 pieces of music that I just loved the most, that I'd worked on.
Mm.
And it was about
Amazing.
kind of getting rid of that and just being like, you know what, this is who I am as an artist. This is what I want to do. This is how I feel about it. This is what I want to say. And of course, that's a varied. It's not necessarily. I think it has a sound. I think it's me, but I think the record is. It also represents a sort of a sort of plethora of influences and interests that I felt like was important for me to represent. And so I went for it, and that's really what it is. The record is like this is my artistic statement as Fresh Kils. This is the stuff that I love making. This is who I am, and it is different from the routines that you might associate with me. And I'm sort of come to this point where I'm comfortable enough with myself and happy enough with the material I put out to put it out and really stand behind it.
Yeah, hell yeah. And yeah, I personally think it's awesome. Gave it a listen front to back too. And like you did mention, there is like a lot of like diversity to different sounds too and stuff, like where it'll
Sure.
open with the guitar and then next thing you know, it kind of goes like the hip hop and then there's like something the more dancey, but it still has a cohesiveness to like, I don't know, just like it all fits like a puzzle, which I don't know if it's just something you're doing with the production that I don't understand or like the backbone of the beats but there's just something where it just flows nicely. So I'm pretty sure you put like a lot of time in like track orders and stuff like that.
It's
Or
funny to hear
maybe
you
not.
say no, you're it's amazing to hear you say that because I really didn't know what the hell to do with the track listing, and you'll notice if you buy the record, and please do go buy the vinyl. But on the vinyl, what I did was I grouped the instrumental songs on side A and put all the feature artists on side B
Ah,
because, again, for even more cohesiveness, there I figured, well, you put side A on and you relax, and then side B is more hype. Um, and I had a lot of
interesting.
meetings. Well, yeah, and I did that because I was a little unsure about the track listing. Again, having so many varied songs, the track listing was impossible. Like it was so hard to figure out where am I going to put this roots reggae song? Like what am I going to do with that song? Like it's clearly going to be a left turn no matter where you put it. How do I set it up? Of course, I'm from that era of album. Like I like listening to albums. I know we're in a singles era right now. But so it's amazing to hear you say that because it was very hard to put the track listing together. I second guessed it so many times, and it's amazing to hear you say. I feel like part of that is I think because I came from the intention of like this is who I this is the material that I like, which is different than what other people are going to like. I mean, people do not all agree on and you probably gone through this where you make a bunch of stuff and then the thing you like least is something that someone else's favorite. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I wasn't going to let that happen. I was going to put out the records that I loved. And I think because I stuck to that intention, that maybe speaks to the cohesiveness of it. And I do think that I can't describe it to you. You'd have to describe it to me what the sound is. I think there is a sound to it. And there are things that I hang my hat on musically, that I think, there's maybe a through point through some of the material. But I really appreciate you saying that because that was one of the hardest things to do was to how to sequence the record and how to make it like how to cohese the whole thing. And I had meetings with marketing people, Spotify people being like, well, don't put out a variety record because they'll deprioritize, the algorithm will deprioritize your release because they won't know where to put it genre
Oh,
wise.
damn.
And I had one and too many of those meetings and just said, screw it. I'm going to, like, I
Mm.
don't give a shit. I'm just going to put out what I want to put out.
Yeah, like again,
The way I
like
want to do it.
I find like that's interesting that you say that because a lot of people I've met through the music industry, they are kind of working with the algorithm, bending it in ways and stuff like that.
You
And
so you
even
have
I
to
learned a
some
couple
degree.
things that I'm trying to do with like the podcast and little clips and shit like that. But
Sure.
also sometimes there's moments where you have to say fuck it and make what you want to make, because that's what's truly unique. And
Yeah.
I know sometimes you got to play the game, but sometimes something will just become a smash hit because it doesn't sound like everything else, it stands
Yeah.
out in like this brush of all the same things. It's like a rose popping out of like a wheat field or something. But
Yeah.
fuck, man, that
Well, I feel pretty secure in the fact that, I've done a lot of like I don't not pandering, but like my routines are really for y'all, you know.
yeah.
I've paid my dues in that sense where I felt comfortable, at my age as well. I'm just being like, you know what, I'm gonna put out, and I gotta tell you, it's been really freeing because I do feel like in some sense it's divided some of my what you might consider my fans. I think not divided, but I don't think everybody loves it. But at the same time, I don't think I've ever been more at peace with putting something out and putting a record out like this, because I mean I do honestly like this is really, disclaimer, really is who I am. Despite what you've seen on stage, this whole,
Mm.
that's in my wheelhouse. Like I'm gonna rock the crowd and do some Tenacious D and like I'm gonna mix it up and have the heavy impact stuff. But
Yeah.
I'm inside. I'm an artist, man, and I have
yeah.
a heart and a soul that I want to show you. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Even this topic too, it's kind of cool because it's connecting to a guest I had on my last episode who was a filmmaker. And actually, when I watched this movie, it was like totally unique, its own thing. And during the credits, there was a quote from a drama teacher he had and dedicated it to her and stuff like that. And I actually loved the quote so much, I took a screenshot on my phone and it's my background. But it says, apparently, like this teacher would have like a mantra when they were like in their class together, and it
Mhm.
said, make something you're proud of, and if nobody likes it, fuck them. And he explained it as like the teacher would say the beginning part and the whole class would say fuck them before they like would do like a performance and stuff like that, and almost like getting in the spirit of he mentioned not like literally like fuck you audience type of thing, but
No,
more like
no.
we're making this to because we want to do this is what
Yes.
entertains us as well, and
Yeah.
everything like that.
Yeah, and I feel like I earned that. I mean, I think
Mhm.
it's probably I done myself somewhat of a disservice over the years, not thinking or not feeling like I could do that, And so,
Mhm.
I couldn't be happier with the way that it's come out, and I can go to bed, like I can go to bed at night, I can sleep well knowing that, hey, I put out the music that I loved, and if it resonates, great, and if not, that's okay. I mean, am I in the
Yeah.
twilight of my career? I don't know what that even means. Like, it's a young man's game. I think that's another thing is like I don't think I've ever been more at peace about the younger generation of artists right now that are like I'm just continually amazed at the talent and like the young people with their hearts in the right place.
Yeah.
And just like I don't think I've ever been more at peace, like handing the torch, giving the torch over, like, and I'm saying that too in as a distinct departure from typically what is like the older generation pointing at the kids and being like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
I don't feel that way at all. I am continually inspired and blown away by the young talent that I encounter on a daily basis, whether that's online or in Toronto in the community, like. So have I left the world in a better spot than I found it? To whatever degree that's true, or to whatever responsibility I have to that, I feel I'm at peace and comfortable with that.
Yeah. That's awesome. I also noticed, I don't know if you noticed this too, because kind of me just on the outside looking into the Toronto hip hop scene over like the last decade. And even when I moved here, I noticed like a lot of like the people on top. There was waves of like a bit of like a negative energy, even like to the point where people used to call the city the Screwface capital.
Oh, it's still the
And
Screwface capital, yeah,
you
for
think so?
sure.
Because I feel
Absolutely.
like it might just because now like I'm really conscious of the type of people I let into my circle. I see like a lot of like more positivity with the older
Yes.
generation that I did now. And I feel like
Yes.
a lot of the positive people are the leaders now, where before it
Right.
wasn't. Like there's like a huge shift. And one person that comes to mind is like Juno T. I got his
Oof.
bottle of beer right beside me on my mantle here.
Oh,
And he's
yes.
kind of like such a
King.
leader, and like guys like you and shit like that. It's just like that whole wave of just good vibes are kind of like the leaders of whether it's like producing and putting other artists on too, which
I-
you've done with your album too. You got different artists and all that, and yeah.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you're absolutely right, and I think Junia is such a great is the one probably the greatest current example of this in that a couple of things. One, I've known June's man, good lord, I've known June for at least 20 years now. His album Studio Monk was a direct inspiration for me to make Disclaimer, and to for a lot of different reasons. But number one, putting out a producer record is hard to do, right? It's like I said before, it's like you're automatically a backseat driver, right? If you know when you have artists on your records, so like you're trying to represent the album from the back seat as a producer, and so that poses certain challenges, marketing wise and otherwise. And what Junes has been able to do as a producer with Studio Monk is unprecedented, I think, in a lot of ways. I think I've never seen a producer record do what his record has done in a certain way. So that his record really made me feel like I could do it. Um, and so again, too, he's younger than me, so I we'll say that I can call him the younger generation, even though he's an OG now. But um, that was a direct inspiration. And to your point about putting people on, I mean, it was always a thing, right, in Toronto, especially in Toronto, but everywhere in the industry, where you couldn't put anybody on until you were on, right? I mean, you know, especially in Canada, that's really hard to do. You've really got to like forge ahead to get somewhere, to get a leg in wherever you got to at the highest level before you can bring anybody with you. Um, and I don't know whether that's as true as it was. I think it definitely was more true than it is now. But being able to bring people along with you has always been, you know, again, like as a producer and as an engineer, you know, I'm in service to artists and other people all the time, and so that's my natural inclination. That's why I got into this. That's why I got it, because I want to be part of the process and I want to help people make records. And so when that process itself is being celebrated, it's a special thing, and it's also when producers succeed, like the scene is, it's a sign of a stronger scene. To your point, it's a sign of a more positive, supportive environment and community that a record like that can succeed that way. And so, you know, to whatever degree that's true of my record as well, I'm proud of that, and I'm proud to be part of that particular part of Toronto for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely like guys like both of you like definitely set that example too. And even like I felt like back in the day a bit too, it's almost like some people would have the attitude like one person's success is going to take away my success, but it's really not like that. And I'm seeing like a lot of like different artists and even people meeting for the first time being like, "Oh, you do this, I do this. Let's work together. Let's work together." And there's like so many like there's like a plethora of like tracks where I'm like almost having a hard time keeping up sometimes of
Hmm.
just people just collabing. And I just feel like Toronto whether you call it like the underground or whatever the core hip hop is it's like really in a healthy place right now.
Absolutely, I think it's healthier than it's ever been. It's always interesting because we always think about it like because we're inside it, you know. Um, and that's another reason why traveling and touring was a big, you know, was a big deal for me, especially at the time. But I look back at those experiences and going into other scenes, and inevitably you compare. And so I wonder. I mean, I agree with you. I think Toronto is in a great spot right now. I think it's incredible the amount of talent we have here, and the support has been great. Um, I don't know. I don't know if you compare that. Like, I don't know. I don't live in Montreal. I don't live in Vancouver.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how that is. I don't know how New York. I have friends that live in New York that tell me about it, but um, it's always interesting to think about, like, how does that contrast? Like, are we in better shape? Are we in worse shape? Probably doesn't matter,
Yeah,
but I'm super happy that we are where we are as
yeah,
as Toronto, as a community here. Yeah.
yeah, killing it. And again, you can only control like your environment too, but like
Hmm.
just doing that like can totally lead an example. And it's cool. I also
Absolutely.
noticed you're gonna be touring a bit, like you're going to Winnipeg, I believe. I saw that. And I
Yeah.
wanted to ask too, I noticed like Roshan's on the bill. Are you gonna be playing like a song that song off the album? Are you gonna be playing more of the album, or are you gonna stick to like kind of like your routines, mix it up? Like what's the
Oof, there's a whole bunch of interesting things going on with that. So yeah, we're going to be doing a short little run in January, Regina, Winnipeg, and Saskatoon, and it's actually kind of a mix-up because in Regina, I've been asked specifically to do my routine set, which, so I think they want me to do the classic kind of high impact, fun routine stuff.
there's a Transformers fan in Regina who
Yeah,
booked you just
exactly, yeah, and he's got to be made happy, right?
yeah.
Can't leave him behind. So yeah, so
Yeah.
so Regina, that's going to be that situation. In Winnipeg, what's really great, and speaking of Juno T, I'm working with a couple of artists. So I've been doing a lot of stuff with my trio, which um, is sort of I have a keyboard player and a sax player that play with me, and I've sort of plugged and play. I've worked with different keyboard players and horn players over the years. And it's such like, for me as a performer, as a beat maker, it really is kind of like this fantasy that I had when I started was, how can I really do this thing live? And performing with the trio, which I did for my release show, was such an unbelievable experience. Being a band leader is different. Like, we're reacting to one another. And as a beat maker, that's special and different. And that privilege isn't lost on me. So for Winnipeg, what I'm doing, and different than Regina, is I'm actually going to be working with, and this is secret right now, so revealing it on the show. There's two members of an amazing band out there called Super Duty Tough Work that are going to play with me. Juno T actually produced their latest record. It's going to be coming out in the new year. Really
Wow.
excited about the record. They're awesome, and they're two of them, the keyboard player and the Barry sax player. Oli, you're going to sit in with me. We're going to have a trio set in Winnipeg. We'll do some of the record, but we're gonna keep it pretty live and free. And Saskatoon, I think I'll probably do a different I'll probably do a different set and play more. There'll be some solo stuff, some routine stuff, but I'll mix it up. And again, to be able to do that on a tour, to play three different shows, I'm not doing the same thing every night, is just a privilege and a challenge that I enjoy. So we're looking forward to that. The other exciting thing in Toronto, I should say, is I believe it's the 26th or 7th of January. I'm going to be playing this incredible producer night in Toronto. It's the 26th,
Oh,
called,
sick.
called Pattern Select. And it is like the de facto producer event in Toronto. It's an amazing monthly run by my guy Astromega, and I'm performing that night with Obuxum, who is unbelievable producer. She's incredible. She's also a label mate on UrbNet. So definitely come check that out. And again, that's going to be a different set as well, because that's strictly for the beat heads. So I'm going to have to get real crazy on like the hard, heavy flips for that set. So it's a different thing every night for me. Thank goodness.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds fire too. I'm gonna have to check my schedule. Hope I'm not booked for an event that day because I missed the last one. And yeah, I'm due to see a set, man. Always
Yeah,
love your energy and everything too. And yeah, I just want to say too, it's cool to hear your story because I've always known you in like passing throughout all the years too. And I know what you do, I see what you do, but I didn't have the superhero origin story to it. And now we got that captured and everything.
I'm glad it came out a superhero, man. You never know. Sometimes could have gone either way, right?
Oh, definitely. You're one of Toronto's heroes to me too, man. And I just I just want to say like yeah, I appreciate your time too to share this with us as well. And yeah, definitely let people know where they can find you on the socials and
Sure.
where they can get the vinyl and all that.
So find me at freshkils.com, freshkils.com. Go there for all things Fresh Kils, for vinyl, the store, for updates, routines, everything. And I'm almost all socials. I'm at Fresh Kils, FRESHKILS. That's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The vinyl can be purchased on Bandcamp at fresh-kils.bandcamp, which is the HerbNet version of Bandcamp for me. But you can also find that on my Bandcamp, freshkils.bandcamp.com. So do pick it up. There's a limited amount of vinyl left. It's a beautiful embossed cover. Incredible artwork done by my man Peter Diamond he's actually from Fredericton but lives in Vienna, Austria. Incredible illustrator.
Yeah, crazy cover, man. It's so cool.
Yeah, amazing work, man. He's really blessed with the cover. So pick up that vinyl if you can, because there's only a few copies left, and there's going to be some exciting stuff announced next year. So keep in touch, keep on it, and thanks so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. I can't believe how fast this hour went by, man. It feels like we've been talking for 10 minutes, but dude, yeah, again, thank you for your time, and yeah, hope you have a great day.
Thank you too, man. Much love.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode with Fresh Kils. Like we mentioned, he's got an album out right now. Disclaimer, check it out. All streaming platforms. If you can afford it, go to Bandcamp. And I think for you collectors, he's got some vinyls as well. And get on that before they sell out. This was such a fun talk, like I mentioned in the intro. We've always crossed paths over the years, and maybe I've seen him at a party here and there, but I never really got to deep dive into his craft and just learn on another level of so many things I've already appreciated about his live show and his work and everything. Truly a pioneer and a pillar in the Toronto hip-hop community, and much respect to Fresh Kils. And before we go, like always, I gotta thank all you absolute legends on the Patreon page. First up, the co-producer Jeremy Hopkin of Hopkin Design, Amanda McKnight of Top 10 Nerd, Ryan Watkins of Ryan Radio, the wonderful Jenny Potter, Devin McBride, Ryan Frickin Campbell, Mike Ulio, the glorious Saber. Look up Saber if you want to hear some good tunes. And last but not least, Francis Coffer, aka my mom. If you want to shout out at the end of these episodes and get all these episodes early, raw, and uncut, right when I'm done the Zoom call, I just post them. You can go to the Patreon page at patreon.com/The Creative Imbalance. It's only a couple bucks, and at the end of the day, you can go to bed at night knowing you're a badass motherfucker who supports independent media. I thank you so much, and we got some more episodes recorded, and I'm even looking at the next one. Oh, this is a good one. So stay tuned, and we'll get at you real soon. Goodbye.